What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and in this video we're going to be talking about what I think is probably the best deck in PSV format, which is Machine OTK. Now, if you missed my guide on PSV format released at the end of last week, then definitely check it out, as it's a good sort of introduction to a lot of the new powerful tools that Pharaoh's Servant introduced into the game. But given that all these powerful tools are at 3 copies until the limited list comes into effect for Imperial format, we can sort of play around with all these cards at full power, and frankly, it makes for a pretty degenerate format in my opinion. Now, I think there is one other sort of main deck that could potentially take this deck's spot as top of the format, but I still think that this deck is explosive enough that it is probably just the best deck anyways. And before diving into why that is, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. We're just under 450 subscribers. I'm planning on trying to reach 500 this month, so it would be great if you subscribed if you're not already. Also, I'm going to be going into Imperial format soon, which is the next format when the limited list gets introduced, which should be a lot more palatable than this format is. So if you're interested in that, definitely stay tuned. Also, if you want to try out any of these formats for yourself, then we do have a Discord server. Link will be in the description down below. It's a great place to find games with tons of people in these really cool formats. So definitely check that out if you're interested. And lastly, if you like this video, as always, please do leave a like down below. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into what makes this deck tick. So the main idea of this deck is that we've got 3 Jinzos available, we've got 3 limiter removals available, and we've got 3 Imperial Orders available, which can set up for some pretty powerful and very insulated OTK pushes. You can basically use Imperial Order as just spot spell removal, and given the powerful spells in this format, this can be very good in that regard. And also, while Jinzo's on the field, it shuts off your Imperial Order, so that means that you can feel free to activate spells if you're able to get out Jinzo on your turn with an order up. This can make it so that, you can prevent your opponent from doing things on their turn, but then when your turn comes around, you get Jinzo on the field, go for a big push, and just get super aggressive and kill them out of nowhere, potentially. Also, given the huge amounts of graveyard revival in this format in the form of 3 Premature Burial and 3 Call of the Haunted, there are many ways to access Jinzo once it is in the graveyard. And there is a very easy way to get it there with something like Painful Choice. In addition, Jinzo can be searched out with Witch of the Black Forest, as it does have only 1500 defense. And something like a Morphing Jar, of which we're playing 2 copies, is able to dump it from your hand into the graveyard, while also potentially drawing you into more cards. So that's why we're playing the Morphing Jars. We're playing the Witches for that purpose as well. Sandgan, of course, is great at getting pretty much anything else that we might want in our deck. It can also get us a Witch to get into Jinzo or Mechanical Chaser, so that's very nice as well. Mechanical Chaser is the level 4 beat stick in this format with the highest amount of attack, and it also happens to be a machine, which goes very well with Jinzo and Limiter Removal. Now, Limiter Removal is a card that gets limited very soon, and this deck sort of shows why. This is a quick play spell that can be activated in the damage step, and it doubles the attack of all machine monsters you control until the end phase of the turn, which can just make big OTK pushes out of nowhere, because if you've got a Jinzo and Mechanical Chaser attacking directly while your opponent's got no monsters on the field, then Limiter Removal will be able to get them up to over 8,000 attack. So this can just kill your opponent out of nowhere. And also, these things do stack. So if you've got multiple Limiter Removal, and let's say you've just got like a Mechanical Chaser on field, that'll actually pump up a Mechanical Chaser to 7,400 attack if you use 2. And if you use 3, I mean, it's just game over if you're actually getting in damage. So, Limiter Removal, crazy card in this format. And it also pairs well with Cannon Soldier, which is largely in here just to serve as like a finisher. If you've gotten your opponent down to a very low life total, you can bring out Cannon Soldier Tribute off your board to deal a little bit more damage, but it also does pair with Limiter Removal as well in a pinch. For the other spells, we've got a Change of Heart, pairs very well with both Jinzo and Cannon Soldier, and can also just be good at getting aggressive pressure on board. We've got Dark Hole to clear the way, Raigeki to clear the way as well, Reborn to bring back our Jinzo or anything else we might want, Pot of Greed to draw deeper into our deck, 3 Trunade just to clear the way for an OTK push, 3 Mystical Space Typhoon, as this can be very good at chaining to an Imperial Order to kill it before its spell negation effect is actually online. Dust Tornado is in the deck for a similar purpose, just to strike out these Imperial Orders, or like Premature Burials or Call of the Haunted, before they can actually do anything important. So I do think that maxing out on the spell and trap removal is very nice. We've also got a Snatch Steal in here as well to get the aggressive pressure going even more. it also pairs well with Jinzo and Cancel, just like Change of Heart does. Now, you might be thinking that this isn't many monsters for the main deck, but you've got to sort of conceptualize a lot of these cards as additional monsters. Painful Choice is basically just another monster, as if you're sending Jinzo to the grave with it, then you can pair it with a Premature Burial or a Call of the Haunted to get it back. Premature and Call of the Haunted are basically both monsters as well, as they can bring back monsters from your graveyard, and you likely will have monsters in grave. And in addition, the Morphing Jars, if you do draw one, can draw you deeper into your deck, make it more likely that you're going to get a monster. So if you don't draw any monsters at all, then you're in trouble, but if you draw pretty much any monster in your deck, you're feeling fine. Moving on to the side deck, we've got 3 Karibo, 4 if our opponent is also on Machine OTK. This can be used to blank their attacks in a way that's very hard to deal with. We've also got the 3 hand rips here, Forceful Sentry, Confiscation, Languid Duo. In case we're going first, we could potentially side these in. We've got 3 Noblemen of Crossout, 3 Light of Intervention in order to deal with Empty Jar, as these basically make that deck dead in the water. We've also got 3 Solemn Wishes. In case we're up against like a burn deck, this can be good in those matches, but I mean, outside of that, it's not really that important. But that's going to do it for the deck. I know that other builds of this can potentially play weaker machine monsters like Guarding the Throne Room and Overdrive to sort of make their limited removals online more often. But in testing this deck out, honestly, I felt pretty good with the low monster count that I've got. And it's just been insanely consistent for me. So let's dive into some duels so I can show you what I mean by that. Okay, we've got our first game against Koff 1996 here. Very active duelist in the Discord, always down to test out these new formats, so happy to have them on. We are going to go into the Rock Paper Scissors, and we will lose that, unfortunately, so we will be going second here. So let's hope we're still able to win this despite that. This is a pretty good hand to start out. Change of Heart plus Jinzo is great. Sangan can search out what we need. We've got limiter removal already and a Dark Hole, so this is insanely good as an opener. But then again, a lot of openers in this deck are insanely good as well. They're going to start with a Confiscation, though, so that can make this a little bit worse. They're going to check our hand, and they're going to send the Sangan. So, kind of unfortunate, but we can still do the Change of Heart Jinzo combo here. They're going to Painful Choice here, sending a bunch of good ones here. Sending 2 hand rips that they haven't used yet, an Imperial Order, and the Sangans. We don't really want them to dismantle our hand more, and if they do have the Imperial Order, then we're kind of dead in the water, as all of our playmakers are spells. So we're going to give them a Sangan, as it's really our only option here. So they're going to take that, and they're going to send all the others to grave here. They're going to set one, set another, pass back to us, and we draw Giant Trunade. So we could activate the Giant Trunade first, just in case they've got an IO. That way we don't waste up our powerful spells. And we're going to think about doing that, or whether we would just want to fire the change. We are indeed going to Giant Trunade, just in case it is IO. And now we can go for our big Change of Heart push here. We're going to tribute over the Sangan. They will get a search, unfortunately. But we do have a Jinzo on field, which can be a bit tough to out. We don't really need to use limited removal yet, as that would get in more damage, but then we'd lose our monster, and we don't really want that. So we're going to pass back to them now. And they're going to activate Snatch Steal, which, you know, it would have been great to save the Trunade in case they had something like this. But unfortunately, we felt the need to go just in case they had Imperial Order. So we do get a bit punished for that. We will be gaining 1,000 back of what we lost here, but we're in a pretty bad position. If we Dark Hole the board, they will get a search, and we're kind of in a tough spot. We draw Mystical Space Typhoon, though, which is probably the best draw we could have gotten here. We're going to Mystical Space Typhoon the Snatch Steal, get back our Jinzo, and be able to attack over the Witch. We could limit removal here, dropping them down to a very low 1900, which is pretty good for us, as we've got Dark Hole, and if we have any way to revive a Jinzo, then we'll be feeling pretty good. But we're going to hold the limiter, as again, you know, we want to save it for a big aggressive push. But they do search out a Cyber Jar, which is kind of worrying, as if they do set the Cyber Jar, they'll be able to clear our Jinzo. And so maybe this is a sign that we should have gone for the limiter instead. But we're trying to save it for the big push at the end, so it is kind of unfortunate. They're going to Card Destruction. Very interesting here. Looks like they're trying to draw into something good here. So they will get to draw 5 cards off this. And they had Dark Hole and Cyber Jar, so I guess they are hoping for another way to clear the Jinzo. Fiend Mega Cyber is a very interesting card that I just want to mention here, since it did pop up. I mentioned this in the guide, but I do think it's a really cool sort of OTK tool, as if your opponent does have 2 monsters in the field and you have none, it's basically like Cyber Dragon. You get to bring it out, 2200 attack. If you've got a Jinzo in hand, you can tribute over it. If you've got something else, then you can clear your opponent's monsters through those means. It's just a very interesting card, so very neat to see. But they're going to draw 5 off of this. Hopefully they get something that can deal with the Jinzo. And they're going to premature burial back their Jinzo. That does deal with ours, so they're going to attack in to our Jinzo, clear theirs, and attack in for 1850 here. They're just going to pass back to us, and all we need to do is draw pretty much any monster, and we'll hopefully win the game unless they do have a Karibo in hand. We draw Morphing Jar, so we actually do have the option here just to set the Morphing Jar, potentially draw some with it to draw into something that can win us the game through that. But, you know, we're just going to try and get aggressive here, get a bit greedy, summon out Morphing Jar, activate Snatch Steal, targeting their Mechanical Chaser, and it looks like that will just be the end of the game. So we did get a bit greedy in the end there, but I think even if they had a Karibo, we'd be in a very good spot having Mechanical Chaser on our side of the field, even if we did have Morphing Jar kind of vulnerable. But that was game 1, and yeah, I think that shows how quickly these games can go. Jinzo is a real powerhouse on the field and can really cut down your opponent's life points very quickly. And there just aren't many good ways to deal with it. That can just be too tough for a lot of decks to handle. So let's see how game 2 goes. I think we're probably going to side into some Karibos, but unclear. We might side into some Noblemen, seeing that they are on a Cyber Jar and that they did have Morphing Jar as well, I think. I think we saw that. If they're on Cyber Jar, they're probably on Morphing Jar. So we did side into a Nobleman, it seems, here. So hopefully we'll be able to hit any of the jars that they might set. They're going to draw 2 with Pot of Greed, set 2, pass back to us. We draw Mechanical Chaser, which is pretty nice. We're going to bring that out, try Nobleman, they're set, and we do succeed. It's a sand game, so that's pretty good, I think. We're going to attack in for 1850 here. Main 2, we're just going to set the Dust Tornado, pass back to them. They're going to activate a Mystical Space Typhoon. This is exactly why I only set the Dust Tornado, as if we had set the Call of the Haunted there, then it might have been sniped off the Mystical Space Typhoon. So we set the Dust Tornado as bait, and they did take it, so we're feeling good about that until they change of heart our Mechanical Chaser, summon out a Jinzo here, and get in for 2,400. That's very worrying. We don't really have a way to deal with this. We draw Mystical Space Typhoon, but that's not really that good against this board, so unfortunately, we won't be able to do anything about that. They're going to attack in for another 2,400. Main 2, they're going to fire a Painful Choice. And they're going to send 3 hand rips here, a Premature Burial, and a Raigeki. This is a bit of a tough choice. Our hand isn't the best, so we could just give them a hand rip. But if we give them the Preem, then if we do have a way to clear the Jinzo, then they can just get it back, so it doesn't really do anything. And if we give them the Raigeki, then they can just clear whatever monsters we bring out. So I think we do actually want to give them a hand rip, and given that duo will bring us down to 1 card in hand, which could be really bad, I think we're actually going to give them the Confiscation. They'll get hand knowledge either way with the Confiscation and the Forceful, but at least with the Confiscation they'll have to pay 1,000. So we are just going to give them the Confiscation, so they'll get that back, fire it off, and let's see what happens here. They're going to take the Call of the Haunted, which I do think is the best choice. If we do have a way to clear the Jinzo, then we could activate Call of the Haunted, bring back one of our own monsters, so I feel like that's probably for the best. We can't really use the other cards in hand. We draw Mechanical Chaser, which actually can be used to get over the Jinzo here, but we play it a bit cautiously. We set the limiter removal, pass back to them, as, you know, if we attacked in with the Mechanical Chaser and the limiter removal, then it would destroy itself, and they could just get in for potentially lethal damage on the crackback there. So we're just going to set it in case they try attacking into the Mechanical Chaser. If they've got some for removal, then that's bad, but unfortunately they do, and that probably will be the end of the game. Yep, they do have a Mechanical Chaser of their own. So this will just be the end of the game. Although, to be fair, given that they did have the Fisher in hand, if we did attack over the Jinzo with Mechanical Chaser and limiter removal, then if we did somehow manage to stick the Jinzo on field, it would have also died to Fisher. So, like, I think we were kind of dead in the water there either way. But that was a very good game too, and again, shows how powerful just the Jinzo on board can be. It can be very difficult to out and can be a major aggressive threat. So that's game 2. Going into game 3, I think that we largely keep it the same as we had in game 2. We might have decided in the hand rips, as we are sure that we're going first here, but this is a great opening hand. We're just going to set a Sangan here, pass back to them. We could have set one of our spells just in case they had a hand rip. But they've only got 3 hand rips in the deck, and they may have even sided those out given that they're going second. So we're just going to keep them in hand. They're going to Pot of Greed there, and they do indeed have a hand rip, quite unfortunate. But honestly, we're not too upset about Duo, as we can just discard the Jinzo, especially when they discard the Change of Heart with the Duo. We can't really get much value with Jinzo in hand. So we're going to send it to grave. We've got the Premature Burial here just in case. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We're going to summon out a Witch, flip up the Sangan, and just attack into their set. We do set one Premature Burial just in case it's a Morphing Jar, but luckily for us, or maybe unluckily for us, it's a Magician of Faith. So they're going to get back a Pot of Greed, which will get them deeper into their deck, and that's pretty brutal for us. We've got a pretty good board here, though. Sangan plus Witch is very nice. So there's that, but other than that, we're just going to set the Limited Removal, pass back to them. Let's hope they don't have a heavy. I doubt they will, but it looks like if they do, they're not going to fire it. So we're going to try activating this Premature Burial that's already on field here, because if this goes through, we can Giant Trinate it back to hand. Maybe we should have Giant Trinated just in case they had like a Mystical Space Typhoon or a Death Tornado for this, but unfortunately, they have Imperial Order, which is a little bit worse. So we will still pay the 8 for the Premature, but it will basically resolve without effect because it's negated. So we're just going to try attacking in. We attack into their Sangan with our Sangan, as we know that they searched that. So we're just going to try and get in for 11 here, and just hope that that Imperial Order hurts them as much as it is us. So we're going to pass back to them, and they will let that Imperial Order expire, which means that they probably have some powerful spells in hand that they want to use here. And indeed they do. They're going to fire a Premature Burial of their own, so they'll be able to bring back a Sangan with this, summon out a Witch, and it looks like they're probably just going to crash. Yep, they're going to crash into our entire board here. So we'll each get some searches. We're going to search out a Mechanical Chaser with that, as we do have the Limited Removal set. They're going to search out a Jinzo, and they have normal summon this turn, so they can't tribute out that Jinzo, but they are just going to crash these Sangans together. We're going to grab a Witch, and they're going to grab a Magician of Faith, which is pretty good. Again, they did normal summon this turn, so they won't be able to bring that out, but they do have another Premature Burial to bring out this Witch here, and then pass back to us. Luckily for us, given that they've got no back row, if they don't have any Karibos, this will just be at the end of the game. We're going to fire the Premature Burial of our own, bringing back this Jinzo here, activate this Trunade, bounce everything back to hand here. The Premature Burial that they've got will also get bounced back to hand, but, I mean, it won't really matter here. We've got a Premature Burial to bring back this Witch, and now we can just basically win the game, as if we crash our Witches, then attack in with Jinzo and Mechanical Chaser under Limited Removal. They'd have to have 2 Karibos in order to stave off that attack, so kind of unlikely, and we'd still have the Witch on field to search out whatever else from our deck we'd need later. So I think this is probably just the end of the game, and indeed it will be. So these games go pretty quick. You know, they're very, very explosive because Jinzo is such a powerful, aggressive threat that can shut down a lot of counterplay. In addition, Limited Removals out of nowhere can just be absolutely devastating. So we didn't really get to see the Limiters in action here, but I did play some other games where they did indeed come up. So let's see how that game turned out. Okay, we've got a game against Aratos here, a frequent guest on the channel. Always happy to have them on. We're on Machine OTK, unclear what they're on, but let's find out. We're going to go into the rock, paper, scissors, and we will indeed win the RPS, so we will be going first here. We'll go first. Let's hope we get a good one here. And this is a pretty decent hand, honestly. We could go for the Morphing Jar right away, but we don't really feel the need to, so we're just going to set the Sangan, set a Dust Tornado, pass back to them. They're going to T-set and pass themselves. So coming back to us, it's not really that exciting here. We're just going to set the Mystical Space Typhoon. We don't want to set the Morphing Jar, as if we set the Morphing Jar, then I set our entire hand, then that'd be pretty telegraphed that we did have the Morphing Jar here. So we're just going to bide our time a little bit more. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Giant Trunade, which is pretty good. We're going to set this Premature Burial, set a Morphing Jar, pass back to them. It would be unfortunate if they attacked in the Morphing Jar and discarded our hand here, but we've got a Premature Burial set, so we don't really feel too bad about losing this Premature Burial. And we feel pretty good about that. Like, Limited Removal isn't the biggest loss, given that we don't really have any machines in hand yet. So we feel fine about this. They're going to bring out a Witch, and they're going to attack into our first set. It's a Sangan, so we'll get a search off that. It is the Witch here. And main 2, they're just going to pass back to us, which feels really good. We are going to activate Premature Burial and target the Sandgan. They're going to think about this, and they're actually going to Imperial Order, to which we will Mystical Space Typhoon, targeting that order. So we will be able to get back this Sandgan here. We're going to set a couple, not realizing that we don't actually have enough spell and trap card zones to fit everything here, so this is a bit of a misplay on our part. So we set those, realize that we don't have enough to set both the Dust Tornado and Limiter Removal, and we fired the True Nade now. We just gotta hope that they don't have a Mystical Space Typhoon or a Dust Tornado, that they'll change this. Unfortunately, they do. So they will be able to take out one of our Premature Burials here. Kind of unfortunate, but at least this way Sandgan does stay on the field. And so that way we don't get a search and get another card in our hand that we'd have to discard off this Morphing Jar. So we're going to set 4, flip up the Morphing Jar, discard this Witch, as we do have another searcher on field with the Sandgan. And we get some pretty good hits off them. You know, we get Snatch Steal, Mechanical Chaser, Jinzo, and Dark Hole, all of which are pretty good to see gone. And we get some powerful ones of our own. We're going to fire this Premature Burial here, bring back this Witch, and just start attacking in. We're going to crash our Witches, and that means that we will be able to search out our deck for the Jinzo here. And they're going to search out for a Mechanical Chaser. And we're going to attack in with the Sandgan here. And unfortunately, it's a Mystic Tomato, so they will be able to withstand that attack. But we can bring out a Jinzo to stop them from using any traps. We set a Call of the Haunted and Imperial Order here. I think this is a little bit of a mistake, as we can't actually use them if Jinzo's on the field. And we probably should have set a Mystical Space Typhoon instead. But these are here in case they manage to actually clear the Jinzo. Then we can bring these online. So that's why we did that, although it's kind of unfortunate here. If we get any powerful spells that we actually want to use, then we won't really be able to easily clear up some back row. They're going to attack into the Sandgan here. We'll take 850. We'll search out a Witch, and they're just going to set 1 and pass. We draw Raigeki, which is great, but we don't have the spell and trap card zones to actually use it, so we're just going to attack into the Mechanical Chaser here, dropping them down 550, set the Witch, pass back to them. They're going to switch this Mystic Tomato to attack into our Witch. We'll search out a Mechanical Chaser. At least this way we could potentially make a Limiter Removal push here if we wanted to. And I think we actually might want it. We're going to think about this, summon out the Mechanical Chaser, activate Limiter Removal to clear up a spell and trap card zone, and also potentially threaten lethal here. And we're going to fire this Raigeki. So they will be able to get a search off the Witch, and it seems like they are main decking the Kribos in case they come up against Machine OTK, which I think is not a bad move. I think Machine OTK is the most powerful deck in this format, so it makes sense to be prepared for it. So this will dampen our big push here, but hopefully we will be able to still get in some damage. We're going to attack in, and they're going to use the Kuriboh on that, and they're going to also use the Kuriboh on our other attack, which means that they had an additional Kuriboh in hand. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get super aggressive there, and we will lose our monsters at the end of the turn, but we do have a Call of the Haunted to bring back the Jinzo, so it's not the worst thing in the world. And we did get them to use up 2 Kuribohs, so that's 2 less Kuribohs they'll have for later. Main 2, we're just going to set this Mystical Space Typhoon and pass back to them, so our monsters will get destroyed. They're going to bring out a Mystic Tomato and attack in. We could potentially activate a Call of the Haunted here to try and get back, like, our Jinzo, but they could just crash into it with the Tomato. And also, if we do activate Call of the Haunted now, if they've got, like, a Mystical Space Typhoon or a Dust Tornado set, then they can prevent us from bringing back the Jinzo to field. So, we are going to think about this and decide against, actually, using Call of the Haunted right now. They're going to set 1, and in the end phase, we're going to fire a Dust Tornado on that. It's a Call of the Haunted of their own, which is very nice. And we draw Snatch Steal, which is pretty decent. We're going to fire the Dark Hole first, though. Set the IO, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Sandgan. They're going to attack in with the Sandgan. But we're going to think about this, and at the start step of the battle phase, we're actually going to try hitting their back row, just in case it's like a Mystical Space Typhoon or a Dust Tornado to potentially stop our Call of the Haunted play. They're going to fire the Mystical Space Typhoon, and they're going to think on the target, and they're actually going to target our Imperial Order. That's fine. We can just chain order that, negate the Mystical Space Typhoon there, and have a spell negate there. And then when they try to attack in, now we can activate the Call of the Haunted without fear of it getting destroyed. So they're just going to pass back to us. And we actually don't have to pay the maintenance cost of Imperial Order while Jinzo is face up on the field. I think that does change in later eras of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, but at this point in time, that's how it worked. So that's a pretty nice thing to know about if you're playing this format. We're going to bring out this Mechanical Chaser and attack in. We could have Snatch Stealed the Sangan, but honestly, we didn't really feel much need to there. Especially given that, like, if they did get rid of Jinzo, then I would go and negate it. So we didn't really feel a need to do that. They're going to search out a monster, and we get another attack in, dropping them down to 4,200, which is a bit dangerous for them, given that we've got some powerful monsters on field. And it looks like they did not draw what they needed to actually stay alive there, so they will just admit defeat. So I think that this game showed that even if the limiter push doesn't really pay off, you can still recover from that quite easily given the graveyard recursion in this format. Like Call of the Haunted, Premature Burial, they're all super strong, so as long as you have a Jinzo in grave, it's basically like you have a Jinzo in hand to bring out whenever you want. So that can be incredibly powerful, but there are some sort of tricky interactions that you do have to learn to play around. For instance, if we had fired the Call of the Haunted first, and then they had activated their Mystical Space Typhoon, we would have had to use the Eye on that, but if they had a Dust Tornado instead of the Mystical Space Typhoon, then we would have just had no real way of actually getting our Jinzo on field, as we don't really have any trap negation outside of Jinzo. So it's always good to be aware of these like minor interactions and what your opponent could potentially chain. And I do think that that adds a new sort of dimension to this format compared to previous formats. And it's honestly a pretty fun dimension to think about. However, the decks kind of are too explosive to make the format healthy. So I think that this will really become fun in Imperial format, which is the next one after the list. But we still got some more games against Aratos here. So let's see if we can win the match with game 2. This is a pretty awesome opener, honestly, because we've got Painful Choice to send Jinzo, Call of the Haunted to bring it back, Io to negate whatever they might want to have. Like, there's just so much good stuff here. They're just going to summon up Mechanical Chaser to set one pass. And we're feeling really fine about that. We're going to start with the Painful Choice. They do have the Imperial Order, but we've got a Mystical Space Typhoon for that. So we'll be able to clear that. Send 2 Jinzo, 2 Premature Burials, and another Premature Burial. This basically guarantees we can get a Jinzo online, because if they give us a Premature Burial, we can just Premature one back. If they give us a Jinzo, we can just Snatch Steal, tribute off their Mechanical Chaser for a Jinzo. So we feel very good about this. They're going to give us a Jinzo here, and we're just going to Snatch Steal their monster, tribute it out for a Jinzo, and attack in for 2,400. Main phase 2, we're just going to set 2, pass back to them. This could be a bit risky if they do have a heavy storm. If they've got heavy, we get majorly punished for this because they activate heavy and we can't chain either of these while we've got Jinzo on the field. But we're really just sort of betting that they don't have heavy storm. And if they don't, then we feel pretty good about this. They're going to activate Dark Hole, getting rid of the Jinzo there. Setting 2, passing back to us. We draw another Call of the Haunted, which is very nice. We're going to bring out this Mechanical Chaser, attack in. They're going to activate a Call of the Haunted of their own, trying to bring back their Mechanical Chaser. So we are going to chain our Call of the Haunted to it, targeting a Jinzo. They've got a Mystical Space Typhoon for our Call of the Haunted, but we've got an Imperial Order for their Mystical Space Typhoon, which means that the Imperial Order will negate the Mystical Space Typhoon, which will allow our Call of the Haunted to bring back a Jinzo, and then once Jinzo's on the field, that will negate the other Call of the Haunted, so they won't actually be able to bring back their Mechanical Chaser. Bit of a complicated chain, but I think it was a really fun chain here, and it was a very good out to basically everything that they had there. As a note, I think their Call of the Haunted will actually stay on field here, because the monster that it's targeting never actually gets brought out, so it won't be destroyed by its own effect. It will just remain continuous on the field doing nothing. So, pretty fun there. We're just going to set this Call of the Haunted and pass back to them. And we feel pretty good about that, and apparently they just don't have any way to deal with this board, so that will be the end of the game. Yeah, all they had were 2 spells that they can't use under Imperial Order, and a Sangan, which would not quite be enough. I guess they could have searched out a Karibo, but that's just delaying the inevitable. And also we could have just drawn another monster here as well. But that's going to do it for these games. I think that these games were a really good showcase of Machine OTK, and a good showcase of how powerful these decks can be. No matter how you build Machine OTK, whether you're lighter on monsters or going all in on machines, I think just the access to Jinzo, like at pretty much any time, as long as you can get into the grave and have Call of the Haunted on field, it's just very, very powerful. And Imperial Order to cut off most of your opponent's very powerful spells is just game-warpingly strong. So oftentimes I think these games do come down to who can either stick Jinzo on the field first or who can activate Imperial Order first, which honestly I think is not really that healthy, especially given that both cards are unlimited, so there are many ways to access both of them. So I'm personally not the biggest fan of this format, even though some of the games can be really fun and explosive. I just think that this deck is too explosive and too dominant to actually make this format that fun. But if you enjoy those sorts of formats, this could be one to check out. Now, this isn't my last video in this format. I'm also going to feature a video on Empty Jar, as that is potentially the other top deck in this format. But after that, I am going to move on to the next format. I know there are other sort of jank decks that you can play, like you could play Exodia using Backup Soldier and like Monster Recovery to recover the head if you discard it. But, you know, we'll save those sorts of decks for next format when things are a bit more evened out. But what do you think of this format? Do you think that I'm sort of overhating on it? Do you think that's a lot better than making it out to be? Or do you potentially think that Machine OTK isn't actually the best deck in the format, and that I'm greatly underselling the other decks that you can make? Let me know down in the comments below. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.